Hi everybody, Bob Olson here with Afterlife TV. This is where we investigate the afterlife, talk about the questions that people are thinking about that subject. You can find us at afterlifetv.com. I'm so excited. First of all, this is our first return guest for the second season. And I'm really excited about it because, first of all, the first video conversation that I had with this guest has had, at this point, over 10,000 views, which is twice as much as some of our well-known authors. So apparently people are loving the subject, loving the guest, as I do. One of our biggest comments is that she's the guest with the best smile. And she's the author of this book. You might remember, Application of Impossible Things. Pull it back a little bit. We're going to talk more about that. What's so cool about this subject is that I thought when I first interviewed her that we were going to talk about everything in the book. Well, we got through basically one of three stages that she went through during her near-death experience, and we ran out of time. There's that much to talk about. We're going to talk about the second stage today, get really in depth with it, and in the future we'll do another video conversation about the third stage. I'm so excited to be able to talk and get more in depth with this second stage called the rest environment with Natalie Sudman. Thanks for coming back, Natalie.
Thank you for having me back, Bob.
Well, this is really an honor to be able to do this. In the last time we were on, you told the story more in depth, but for those people who are just, tuning in, just finding out about you for the first time, tell us a little bit about your story.
Okay, I was working in Iraq for the Army Corps of Engineers in 2006 and 2007. And in late 2007, the vehicle that I was traveling in was hit with a roadside bomb. And when that bomb went off, I went out of my body and had what's known as a near-death experience.
That's right, and the classic near-death experience. I haven't run into one like yours. I mean, I know they're all somewhat different anyways. This one has a lot of depth to it. One of the interesting things, and this is leading to my first question, one of my interesting things is when you called it the blink environment because basically you blinked and there you were in this new environment. You described it as being almost like on stage in front of thousands of beings, as if you were a rock star in a large stadium. And you were downloading information to them. What kind of information were you downloading to them?
Well, it was really complex. I'm not, it's difficult to describe because it's like, it's not like transferring information in a linear fashion. It's like clumps of knowledge or clumps of information, or and all I did was transfer it to them. So it was, I would say, broadly cultural information. It was all physical world information, how things connect to each other, and how they interact with each other, and that's from the cultural level and interpersonal levels, and a lot of it was information about communications and broad structures of organization of energy that informs cultures and even science, or what we might consider organizations within cultures. That kind of thing.
Wow. All right. A little complex. Obviously complex. You trying to put it into words I know is even more complex. But basically this is information that these beings would, as a being, you can only get from having a physical life, right? And so you're telling them,
right.
What is it? Just this lifetime? Are you just downloading information from this lifetime that you've gained?
No, I would say some of the information was from this lifetime and from this present moment of where the world is right now. but it was more of, a lot of it was, I mean, beyond what we would consider to be the physical world. You know, it was energy structures.
Yeah.
And what was happening with those energy structures. And so we wouldn't call that physical world, but it is the physical world. It's the energy structure that supports and maintains the physical world. So a lot of it, you know, it went from that level all the way kind of down to the ground level. And and because a lot of it was that kind of energy information, it's hard for me to say that it's from this lifetime. It's because when you're in that expanded awareness, all lifetimes are this lifetime.
That's right. Okay. And I think we're going to keep coming back to that, because that's sort of a common theme with most near-death experiences. People are recognizing the time-space thing. Talk about confusing people, right? And making it hard to talk about. One of the things I want to talk about, first of all, people, I want you to know, I'm talking about to the audience here, the first video conversation that we had, which is about, I don't know, it was last March, 6 months ago or something, is down below this one on afterlifetv.com. So if you're looking for it, you can go. You don't have to watch that one first. You can watch this one first and get just as much information out of it, and go back and watch that other one at any time. The interesting thing that I said in that first conversation was, this is, when I first got this book, it seems like it's a thin book, 100 and maybe 20 pages or so, but the information, you were so careful about the way you wrote the information in here, and that's what we're already recognizing from you starting right off in this video, is that you are being really careful about how you answer the questions and describe the things that you experienced. That's one of the things that I love about you, is that you have a great way of articulating the experiences that you've had, whereas a lot of other people, I probably would have been one of them, would have just said, you know, it's really hard to describe in human terms and just give up there, right? So, all right, so based on that question that I just asked, this is one of the things I was thinking about, because I was watching the video over again this weekend, and I'm thinking, all right, here you are in the stadium, you're downloading information to thousands of beings. One of the things that you said was that some of these beings are having lives simultaneously. All right, so they're there with you in the stadium, but they're also having lives simultaneously somewhere else. She's going, I don't remember saying that. But no. All right, so because of that, what got me wondering was, were you, and I think we lost your video, so all I'm seeing is one. I know it's going to come back, but I can't even see you right now. Hey, you're back. All right, good to see you. There's that smile that everybody's talking about. All right, so one of the things that I was thinking about is it possible that you, and I know you know the answer to this question, you were downloading this information in whatever realm that was, we'll call it the blink environment, you were downloading that information, that part of you, and when you left your body because of the bomb, you then became aware of it. You became conscious of the fact that you were doing that. Or, I think what a lot of people were probably thinking was, you left your body because of the bomb, you left your body, and then you went and downloaded all this information. Once I got thinking about it, because I hadn't before, no, she was probably downloading that information already. She just became aware that she was doing that. Is that, what's the truth in that?
I think that you're right in that all I did was shift my focus as a consciousness, as a being. I think that I'm always downloading that information to them, but that's kind of a background running thing. Whereas when I left my body, then I had all that extra awareness or that focus. I was able to just put that all on the downloading. Yeah. And so the downloading then may have become more intense or something. I don't really know, but yeah, I think that I'm doing that at the same time. I mean, because time is so different there too, that that question in some ways, I have to kind of break it down, because in some ways, from the expanded awareness, it doesn't make sense. Of course, all things are happening simultaneously. So there's not that linear progression. And yet there is a kind of progression that's just way more complex than our very linear time progression.
Okay. All right. But from our human physical perspective, most of us would think, because I just automatically thought at the very beginning, oh, she left her body and then now she here. Oh, and I thought she had to hit this bomb to leave her body to go do this. That was all meant to be. But no, you were downloading already. You just became aware of it, and it wasn't just you. So basically, we're all doing this. Each one of us, everybody watching this, we're all doing this. We're doing things on a spiritual level. Things going on in the background, as you say. Great way of describing it. And we're just not aware of it.
Yeah, we are. I mean, as spirits, we're more than just the focus that we have right here in this physical body. I mean, this certainly takes a very clear and razor focus to stay in this body and maintain a body in the physical world. But we're so much more than that, and we can maintain other things as well.
That's very cool. I mean, my goodness, that's a mind-blowing concept right there, I think. And so it leads me to ask you, because you're so good at articulating things, how would you even label then these different parts of ourselves? So, for instance, the spirit, the spiritual part of you as a physical person, any one of us as a physical person, there's a spiritual part of us. I'm curious as to what we would call that, what you would call that, because everybody has different names for it, but what you would call that versus the part of you that was downloading information to all those thousands of beings, the part of you that's working in the background. And then I'm wondering, is there another part? So I'm wondering if there is. See, I used to think of things in terms of, okay, there's our physical self, there's our spirit, and I would think that our spirit would be within our physical self. Yeah, maybe it can come and go. I never really thought of it being in two places at once, so that confuses things for me a little bit. So I thought when we die, when we pass, our spirit leaves our body, goes back into the spirit world. Bob, the spirit of Bob, will always be there. But I always thought of it sort of, then there was another part of me, which was my soul, which was me with all the other lifetimes that I've had, Bob and George and Larry and Susan, So my soul is the bigger part of me, the higher self, some people might call, okay? But how would you define it then? So now I'm questioning if that is even accurate. How would you define these different parts of ourselves? Do you have names for them?
Well, I mean, I guess I have a lot of names for them. Depending, because, I mean, the way you think about it, that's accurate. It's not necessarily true, but it's accurate, and it's practical, and it's workable. And because our awareness here in the physical body is limited in certain ways by what we've chosen to forget by coming into this body, or by the beliefs of our cultures or whatever, but we've limited our awareness in that way for reasons. And now I just lost track of where I was. The thinking of ourselves as inhabited by my spirit and then leaving my body, that's a workable thing. That's a workable model. For me, I think of myself as I have a focus in this body. And I call it my core. That's okay. Just my word, okay. Probably my most common word for it. And I can also, while in this body, shift my focus and be aware of being in the non-physical. I mean, for me, there's no separation between the physical and non-physical.
Yeah.
It's all one.
Right.
we make that distinction for reasons, practical reasons again, but in my mind, that split has quit serving me. So they're one, and all I have to do is shift my focus to be in one or the other.
Yeah.
And as far as there being a soul, like an oversoul or an even bigger me, yeah, I mean, I've experienced that. It's like people talk about guides or the help that they get. And my understanding of my guides is that they're parts of myself, my soul. It's almost like I'm a splinter of my whole self. And I still have connection and clear communication with that whole self and all its splinters. That's just how I think of it. I mean, there's different models or ways to think of it, but all those other parts of myself are simultaneously living all those other lives, or, you know, in the physical or out of the physical. They're having their experiences, but we're all also one experience.
All right. Yeah. Honestly, that's so cool, because another thing that I never thought about was this idea. You know, I always thought of spirit guides as being
Other.
Yeah, other, and in a way they are other. And so, you know, sometimes, you know, there's all this talk about sometimes they've lived human lives, sometimes they haven't, whatever. But I never thought of them as actually being parts of my whole self or my soul, what I would call my soul, that part of me that has had many lives. And of course, why not? Why? Perfect, you know. Who would sign up to be with me for, you know, anyways, you know, who would do that? Me.
Yeah.
Of course. So, and then of course when I go back and I'm upset about something, I can only blame myself. So, someone left a great comment. You know, if I have a really lousy life, am I not then a victim of my own soul's choices? And it's like, well, I guess you could use the word victim if you see yourself separate as your soul, but, and it's certainly in this case,
not a victim of anything.
No, well, exactly, but you know, there's a lot of people coming in, you know, with a lot of different consciousness, and so they were trying to make sense of it. This even helps even more, because it's like, you know, this isn't even your spirit. This isn't like some separate spirit guide who are making these, you know, helping you along and messing up your life. This is still parts of you. So if you can be mad at yourself, okay, you know, we'll be mad at ourselves, and we probably will be, many of us. All right, that really helps. Thank you for doing that. I'm so glad I asked that question. That just changes so much for me. All right, so we were in the Blink environment. The Blink environment was the first interview that we did. So much to it, so incredible. All the things that you taught us in that interview. This time we're going to talk about the rest environment, REST environment. You call it the R&R stage, or the recuperate and restore energy stage, whatever it may be. Let's just start about when you first went into that stage. Now, again, I understand there's no linear progression of how all these things happen. It's kind of all happening at once. But at the beginning, you talk about, rather than just move like from one place, like the Blink environment, to the rest environment, you say you sort of fold in upon yourself. Love that phrase. Let's start from there. Explain what that is a little bit. Folding in upon yourself, and then what happens from that point on.
It feels like folding in upon myself. It just feels like going, well, to me it almost feels like turning inside out, but I'm sure that's not very helpful to people. If you close your eyes and are in a really safe and comfortable place, and just sort of, you know, that sinking in feeling of going to sleep, or just going, sort of hovering on that half sleep where you're really comfortable and you're both completely within yourself and still sort of vaguely aware that you are yourself and you're in a body.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's the closest I can come. It's going in like that, but maybe even deeper. I mean, it feels like it just keep going in and in and in.
Yeah.
And it's very, very comfortable. I mean, it's probably the safest place I can find for myself is to go into that place.
Really?
It's that comfortable. It's beautiful. And just totally relaxing.
Yeah.
And when I went into that space, I guess this would be a version of the life review that a lot of people report when they have NDEs. I guess it's kind of a review, but it was more like just sort of a very leisurely stroll through memories. Sometimes you sit and you just kind of get lost in a memory, and you're not evaluating it, or you're not judging it as good or bad, or, oh, I should have done this, or I should have done that. When you're thinking about a really good memory, you're just enjoying it, sort of reliving it. And that's how all of this was. Whether I was looking at something bad in my life or good in my life, it was all, it all had that lack of judgment on it. So it was very leisurely. And I was evaluating what I had done in my life, but I was evaluating it on my own terms. I was evaluating it on my own sense of what I had wanted to do, or what was fun for me. So, and there were a couple other beings with me, but it was almost like they were texts or something. I mean, I was paying no attention to them. I could tell that they were sort of tweaking little energy flows or something in me, almost like tuning a car. But I was paying no attention to them, and they weren't interfering or interacting in any way other than sort of this technical witchy stuff.
Okay. All right, I'm going to stop you there because we're covering more ground at once than I want to. So I'm going to slow you down because there's so much to this. All right. The majority of this, would you say, not in time or anything else, but like in context in what took place, would you say that this life review portion was the majority of the rest environment, or was it just a piece of it?
I would say that it was I would say that it was a piece of it. And it was almost like the main point was this deep relaxation.
Okay.
And then in that deep relaxation, I was sort of daydreaming. And that daydreaming, that very light, easy daydreaming, was the life review. It wasn't anything dire or heavy or.
Is it healing? Is it recuperating to have this life review? What's the benefit of it?
It was more like daydreaming. It wasn't even like, it wasn't part of the recuperating. It didn't feel like. It just seemed like it was just so casual. It was, how you daydream. You just you don't really care what you're daydreaming about, but it's kind of enjoyable, and while you're doing something else. That's how light it was.
All right, but you do call it an evaluation. You get to the point where you call it an evaluation versus a what? Versus no, you say it's not an evaluation. It's an examination. See, this is why I love this. Okay, so you choose these words carefully. You said it's not an evaluation, which is what so many of us think of the life review as, an evaluation of our life. instead you just say it's sort of an examination. You gave a great example of candy to try to help us understand it. Do you remember that in the book? You talk about trying to choose what kind of candy you want.
Yeah.
And it's not like one's bad, which one do I feel like right now?
Right. Yeah, it was all good. I mean, we have this idea that a life judgment is judgment, a life review, and we're judging ourselves, and I fell short here, and I was evil here, and I was mean here, and none of that matters. It doesn't matter. You're having an experience, and that experience is valuable.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, that all you're doing. I mean, I had things that I was looking for while I was doing that review, like, oh wow, that was a creative one, or that was really fun. I could see how the thread put together and how it led to this really fun thing or something. So I was, in a sense, learning, and I guess even daydreaming, we're learning. A lot of times we're putting ourselves into a situation in our daydream to find out how we would react, or to learn something, a little something, and it doesn't have to be big. And in this life review, I was certainly picking out and going, oh, look at that, but I wasn't ever judging myself as good or evil, or saying this was a total disaster, oh no, I'm so awful.
Yeah.
It didn't happen, okay, that was not very valuable, whatever, I'm not going there.
Yeah. No regrets involved. All right. So you touched upon something I was going to talk about later, talk about now, because you kind of brought it up. In daydreaming, in looking at these life experiences that you have had up until now, or up until that, whatever. I'm not going to the time thing. I'm trying to be so careful. It's like you talk about choices and potentiality. You sort of touched upon it just a second ago. Looking at the choices that you made, but the other potential that existed if you had made other choices. Can you expand upon that? Because that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, every time we make a decision or a choice, the choice that we didn't take, it still exists. This is going to get like really esoteric.
Could you see it?
It's confusing, but I mean, I kind of explained it in the last chapter in some sense of my book. But we're infinite, and our focus potentiality is infinite, and our exploration is infinite. So every time we split off, there's a part of ourselves that splits off with that other decision,
right,
and follows that out. So when I was in my life review, you might think of it as I was looking at the trunk of the tree, all the choices that I did take, and that was the main focus. But I could also see all the branches going off, and where those might have led if I had chosen to carry my focus in that direction.
Okay.
My primary focus.
So you can kind of see that as if it were like a little movie, kind of a little daydream, or
yeah.
Again, probably impossible to describe, but that's really neat. All right, so we're not then, as these multi-dimensional, infinite spiritual beings, we're not living each one of those choices then, right? We're only living the one choice.
We're maintaining our focus on the one choice.
Okay. All right. That's a good... You got me there. All right. Put me in my place.
No.
No, I'm just kidding. Okay. No, it's great. I didn't think that we were, but when you start talking to someone like you who has had these experiences, now I'm starting to think anything's possible. So yeah, maybe we're living all the choices. and then
that could be possible, I suppose. I mean, my brain can't even get around that. So I don't go there. I say I'm maintaining my focus here. And if other me's are splitting off and living out their choices, that's okay. And I'll find that out later. But right now, my little brain can't handle that.
Well, I'm gonna settle on that one, because then every time I make a mistake, I'll go, well, I actually I made the mistake here, but I made the right choice somewhere else. And I'll be happy about it later.
Right.
Okay. So in this variation of the life review that you talk about, you drift into reflection. You talk about layers and links. Do you remember talking about layers and links? All right. I knew I was going to have to read at one point.
You'll have to read. I read the whole book again this morning.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Layers and links. I simultaneously perceive layers of emotional, mental, and physical experience with underlying connections and patterns and progressions, as well as the links between all of those. Layers and links that don't acknowledge as real in physical consciousness become obvious. What's that mean?
Well, in our physical world experience, like even take this experience right here, we're not aware of all the little strings and pieces and parts and decisions and emotions that led to you and I sitting here talking to each other.
Right.
Whereas in an expanded awareness, you can focus and become aware of every single little piece that led to this moment. In every single way. And it could be that butterfly wing thing, a butterfly flapped its wings next to me and that made me do this and that, and it changed everything. It changed my whole life. It's that detailed if you want to focus there. And that kind of being able to see that kind of depth and those kinds of layers and layers and layers and details, it's not difficult to comprehend on the expanded awareness level the way it would be here. I mean, we'd have to in a linear way think through each of those things and go, oh, that and that and that and that and that.
Yeah.
But being able to comprehend it as a whole and understand all the energy movement, which is the important part for me, because that's what I was interested in.
Yep.
The energy movement and the energy patterns that led to XYZ. Those were the things that interested me, and they were, although they seem incomprehensible to understand or take in from a physical mind viewpoint, on that level they were not difficult.
That's right. You could understand them a lot better, and they are interesting, I think, to a lot of our audience as well. And some people, my guest Graham Nichols, who talked about out-of-body experiences a couple weeks ago, called it the lattice. Of course, many people call it the matrix. I mean, we're kind of talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
You then go in the book from talking about the layers and links to talking about coincidences. This is where coincidences happen. Let me just give you an example. I had emailed you. Well, I mean, I don't know. I had emailed you just to let you know, hey, your video has had over 10,000 views. Next thing I know, you're going to be in D.C. because in Arizona, we can't do this. You don't have good internet connection. This is where we do it. And that was quite a coincidence that I happened to email you just before you were going to be going there. Maybe it's just important that we do this at this time in our physical world. I don't know, but anything else to say about coincidences in relation to this?
Just that there is no coincidence. That's our word for things that we can't explain logically from our physical mind. rational perspective. But there are no coincidences. That everything is crafted, and I shouldn't say maybe everything is, because what I've discovered is that there can be mistakes or accidents. Let's call them accidents. Like accidents of, this person is over here creating this, and I'm over here creating this, and they interact in a way that's unexpected.
Yeah.
So in that way, there are accidents, but most of the time, in my experience, coincidence is actually communication and a higher self crafting some particular thing.
All right, so I was kind of wondering about that. I wondered, is this just creative intelligence? The creative, the universe, what I would maybe call the universe, making these things happen, or is this spirit guides or our whole self / soul, doing the puppeteer thing, making it all happen? From your experience,
that's all the same thing.
Same thing. Okay, you got me there. You're right. Well, no,
From expanded awareness, but and honestly, it's at different times I think of it in different ways.
Yeah.
Because maybe it's useful sometimes to make the distinction between, is that my soul, or is that a spirit guiding me, or is that the universal flows of energy, God, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes it is useful for me to make that distinction, but in the end, those are all the same thing. We are our spirit guides. We are one.
Right.
And everything is one, which means that we are God. We are God, or God is us, through us, whatever word you want to use for that, source, goddess, whatever.
Yep.
It's all the same thing that we're talking about with those words. And so sometimes it's useful to make the distinction, and sometimes it's maybe more useful to stretch our minds and understand that all those things are the same things. They are me.
And while you can say that there are no coincidences, not everything also is necessarily meaningful. A bird can fly by me and it's not necessarily a message, right? I mean, from your experience, everything you learned in that experience, isn't that true? Sometimes the bird is just a bird.
Everything is not
Yeah.
grandly meaningful.
Right, yeah.
There's still spaces in there.
There's bubble gum on the tar. I should eat it. It's so meaningful.
It's for me.
I should frame that gum and put it up. So we're kind of talking. Obviously, we're talking about the oneness, the interconnection of all things. You certainly talk about that in this chapter. That's what we're talking about here. Something else that just seemed to come in this chapter for whatever reason, and I loved it. In this section of the chapter, we had talked about it in the last video. I had asked you what something with the afterlife sounded like, and you had never been asked that before, but you recognized that it affected all the senses were affected at once. And one of the things, just a little quote. You said that the senses are linked, they're informing each other. I loved the idea of them informing each other. And you said, I don't think I talk about this in the book at that time. And so in a way you did. You did talk about it in the book. You covered it. Maybe expand a little bit for our audience who hasn't read the book, what that means when our senses are informing each other.
Well, and I've actually had experiences of like this in the physical world, and I've heard of other people too, but when I say I see a green leaf, in expanded awareness, I would also, that leaf would have a taste, a flavor. It would have a sound. It would have a feel. All my senses would sense that leaf. Whereas in the physical body, certainly in this culture, we're very visually oriented. So we concentrate on what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And a lot of times tune out our other senses. But in expanded awareness, you can do the same thing. You can focus on one thing or another. But it's very easy, at least it was for me, very easy to experience something from all the senses. And it was almost like those senses were expanded as well.
Yeah.
And much more interconnected.
And now that you've had this experience, do you do that more now in physical life? Do you find yourself sort of not focusing on the visual primarily?
What I discovered is that I have always done that, and I guess I always thought that everyone.
All right.
Like numbers, especially. I remember. I've always known that numbers have a feel to them and a flavor.
Wow.
And I guess I was kind of surprised to find that other people didn't.
I definitely had never thought of numbers as having.
But I think it's.
Flavors.
I probably choose to do that more since after my MD.
Yeah. Well, that's so cool. I mean, I certainly. It's extraordinary that you did that your whole life, right? Growing up, you just sort of came natural to you. No connection there as to why then you might have had a near-death experience and someone else wouldn't have, right? I mean, a lot of people ask that question. Why do they have a near-death experience and then they come back where other people just die,
Well, I mean, there's probably as many reasons for that as there are people.
Yeah. Each
of us is, as a spirit or as a soul, is exploring their own curiosity. They're following their own curiosity, and that's also in tandem with our consciousness, our conscious selves too. So, there are a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
To go that route.
And I'll just say now, I don't need the comments and the emails that I use the word die. I recognize we don't die. Hopefully, the host of Afterlife TV recognizes we don't die. All right, so let's see the next step. The next thing that I wanted to talk about, which is sort of the next step in, if we gave it a linear progression here. Well, you kind of covered this. You said, life is evaluated on the basis of usefulness toward personal creative ends. You did cover that a little bit. I liked that you talked about that, though. How was that useful? Sort of that word. How was that useful? We talked about the choices and everything. And one of the things you looked at was whether they were useful towards your personal creative ends or not. Just a great little paraphrasing or quote from you on there. And then you also talked about how small actions interconnected and sent ripples to far-reaching effects. Again, this is the links and the layers, and many of us are aware of the ripple effect of things that happen in life, choices that we make. But you sort of take it to a whole new level when you were talking about, those links and layers and coincidences. Any more to say about that before we move on from that?
No, I don't think so. Other than, I think it might be a tendency of some people to then overthink their choices, like try to figure out, oh my God, if this is that far-reaching, then I have to make the right decision. I can tell you that any decision you make is the right decision. You don't have to, angst out about making the little decisions, okay. Which I certainly used to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes still slip back into, but because it's easy to do that because you know how far-reaching they are. But honestly, any decision you make is going to be acceptable and good from a spirit point of view.
Okay, from a spirit point of view.
It will always be valuable from a spirit point of view.
Even if it does harm to another?
Well, harm to another, I mean, that's a physical world judgment.
Yep.
You know, it may be... Yeah, that gets into...
I know, I put you on the spot. You can't fully describe that in a short interview like this.
Either in the physical world or in expanded awareness for that to make sense.
Yeah,
you know,
okay.
when you're straddling those, then it's going to take longer than an hour to explain.
That's right. All right. But with that said, so everybody, you know, don't jump all over her because, you know, she's just telling her truth, right? You're telling your truth based on your experiences. But, you know, when someone does do harm to another, do you believe that there's any soul contract type of a thing? People call it that. Do you think there's any contract between them ahead of time? You know, I'll murder you, you know?
I think that's another case of every answer being different for every person.
Do you think it's possible?
I think some people do make a lot of, people call them contracts. I would call them agreements.
Agreements.
It's not a contract. You can get out of it. You can change your mind anytime you want to.
Yep.
And I know people aren't going to like that. Some people are going to argue, but that's my experience.
Yeah.
You can always choose not to do it. But those agreements are made on a spirit level, and so the value is obvious up there, and or over there, or right here.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you don't still play out the physical emotions and the physical judgments. I mean, that's part of our physical experience, is experiencing all of that. It's like you can write a script for a movie and make it, you know, make somebody kill somebody and somebody rape somebody, all these awful things in this movie. And then you can act out the movie, and then you can show the movie, and we think it's, you know, we know that it's not real.
Yeah.
Well, from the spirit level, that's kind of how it looks.
Mm-hmm.
Even though when you're in it, yeah, it feels real and it's horrible.
Right.
It can be wrenching. It can be awful.
Yeah.
That's real too, and
Yeah.
it's valuable, even though we may not see that.
And that's it. I mean, and that's a key distinction to make. We're talking from a spiritual level here. We're talking from a spiritual level. Agreements is a great word. A lot of people, I've talked to other people about contracts, and the biggest question, the most common question was, you know, well, what about free will? They were stuck on the contracts idea and agreements actually works better, especially for those people, because they're like, well, I got free will, they have free will. How does a contract work if we're stuck with that? Agreements allows you to change your mind later. So I like that phrase. All right, let's shake that off because heavy stuff. Blah, shake it off. Let's move on. So something a little more less heavy. You talked about the rest environment as being very peaceful, and you described it. One of the reasons it was so peaceful was because there was a lack of. You had a long list of things. There was a lack of time limits, criticism, fear, anticipation of punishment, recriminations, debts, outcomes, or conclusions. You said it's profoundly liberating. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I think in our physical world, in our physical lives, we don't even realize how much all of those things come into play. Unconsciously, subconsciously, back of our minds, whatever. You know, you have the little voice going, you shouldn't do that. You know, you shouldn't eat that chocolate.
Is that what yours sounds like?
Yeah. It's more like
that's great.
But we have a lot of underlying fears and and judgments and recriminations and guilt that influences how we move through the world. And some of those are useful. I mean, some of them probably, I don't know. I mean, just experiencing those things as a spirit is actually fun.
Right.
Believe.
Yeah, right.
But also, you know, when you're in the movie, then you follow the rules of the movie, you know? Yeah. And so we're following the rules of the movie, and some of that has to do with negotiating emotion and experiencing a very specific cause and effect kind of a reality. So I'm not saying that those things are bad or good. They're not. They just are.
Yeah.
But when you can let go of all of that stuff, all of those little voices and all of the reasons you should or shouldn't do things, and it is profoundly liberating.
Yeah, I can understand that. It's hard to imagine not having those things, you know, those things going in your head all the time. But the closest I could come to it when I was reading about it, I was thinking of going on vacation. Like, there's something really liberating about going on vacation. You know, I don't check my email, you know, all the time. I'm not checking my phone all the time. You know, like, I'm just away. I'm giving myself permission to be free from those things. And so I was thinking, wow, if that feels that good, imagine what it's like to just wipe it all clean, right?
Yeah.
Must have been amazing.
I like that you use the word permission.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, a lot of times we can just we don't even realize that we're the ones not giving ourselves permission to set aside the fear.
Yeah.
We have to, you know, sometimes I just go, wait a minute, why am I not doing that? I'm going to give myself permission to do that, you know, and then suddenly it's like being on vacation. Oh, I can eat that chocolate.
Yeah.
Gave myself permission.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. I can remember being on this, 6-7 years ago, being on this particular type of workout that I was doing. And you could have a free day. You had a free day. You know, you had to be so strict about everything all week long, but you had a free day. And it was giving yourself permission. Eat whatever you want. You know, don't exercise. Just, you know, have a great day without all the commitments that you've made. And I thought about how, wow, that's amazing. Like, we could do that with so many parts of our lives. You know. So, anyways, interesting. I love that point. I thought it was important. What do we got here? Okay, again, you touched upon it very briefly. You're in this rest environment. You've folded in upon yourself. You've had all these experiences and that we've talked about. Are there other beings there? Obviously, there are, because you mentioned that they were. Tell us the first question, because you gave the answer in the book. Who decides who is present in this rest environment where you're at?
Oh, I decide. It's my environment. My sense is that no one could come into that environment without my allowing that, or my inviting them, or I certainly had to allow it. It's a very private environment that I am in complete control of.
And you let, how many beings did you let into this environment as you were experiencing it? I don't even remember what I said about that in the book, but I think 2. Okay.
I sensed 2 of them.
I don't think you did say. I got a sense that there wasn't many, but I didn't know how many.
Yeah, I have.
All right, and what are they doing there?
They're just sort of. I think of it as similar to tuning up a car. They're just kind of tweaking I'm going to call it energy paths, or. If you think of the lattice or the structure, there's still, even though I'm in that environment, I'm not physical in any way. Mm-hmm. I'm energy, but that's still an organization of energy, or that's how I'm going to explain it. And
and you have the right to do that. That's how I'm going to explain it, and I'm sticking with it.
And so that organization of energy, maybe as an example, say let's imagine it as an energy ball and all this very complex matrix or lattice work inside. That's sort of the structure of the energy flows. So all they're doing is tweaking some of those, cleaning them up a little bit.
They're doing it for you, something that is going to be longer lasting. Sorry, have to use time phrases. Longer lasting, even when you go back into your physical body, or is it just for that present moment?
No, it's long lasting.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. This whole experience, you said, any more to say about those people before I move on? Those beings, actually, so with these parts of yourself, like you define spirit guides, or are they separate from your whole self?
I would say that they're parts of myself.
Any interaction with them, or are they just doing their thing, you're doing your thing?
Interaction with them at all.
No.
Other than giving them permission to come in, to enter that area. No, there's no communication, and I'm just kind of completely ignoring them.
Okay, but you're aware that they're there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So going back, so you in the book you described. You might regret that you did this. That it was like you were there for centuries. It was like you were there for centuries, and but it was really, maybe in human terms, a couple 2 or 3 seconds. What can you say about that? How can you help us understand that?
I'm not sure how to say. Okay.
You're not sure you said that? Do you want me to find it? No, I'm just kidding.
Right. I think that we experience similar things. When we're daydreaming, a lot of times time will pass. You're just sort of go deep into a daydream. You come up and you're like, come on, it's 4 hours later.
Yeah.
Or that was only 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That kind of, I don't know, you can fit a lot into a short amount of time, or you can kind of stretch time out, I think.
Definitely. I mean, when we're writing, playing music, when we're really having an experience like that, certainly time flies by. I also thought of it. I've had anesthesia, and it's the reverse, but it's sort of the reverse of that. So I come out of anesthesia, it feels like it's been 2 seconds.
Right.
And they're like, "Oh, it was a 6-hour surgery," What?
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
Very similar. So when I'm in this depressed environment, when I'm in there, I'm not that's another outside of time thing too. That there is no time, so that I describe all this, going through all these environments kind of as in a linear fashion, and they weren't necessarily in a linear progression either. So even though I'm in the blink environment, I'm also in the rest environment at the same time, and yet again it's a matter of shifting focus.
Yeah.
So I can go back there, I can be there at any time I want to right now.
Okay.
Because all it is a focus shift. But the amount of time that I spent there focused in this environment, in this experience of an NDE, it felt like hours and hours and hours, an equivalent of hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
And yet when I went back to the blink environment afterward, it was, again, like I had been gone just for, a blink.
Yeah. And that's what happens. And so you shift your focus, you're back into the blink environment, the environment of the last interview, right?
Mm-hmm.
After this one. Time has gone by. A couple... you say some really important things about beliefs and intent in there, and I just kind of feel like it would be great to... What did you learn while you were in there about the power of our beliefs and the power of our intentions while you're... I don't know, I think I couldn't tell if you were still in the rest environment or you had got back into the blink environment, doesn't really matter. But what did you learn about beliefs? You would use the example of a guy and money, the way he thinks about money.
Yeah, our conscious beliefs have a huge impact on what we create and how we create. There's our whole self experiencing things through this body or through this reality, and sometimes that intention comes through, but a lot of times our conscious mind is the one creating, and that's okay. I mean, that's what we're here to do. I think, or at least some of us are. But they interact, and sometimes they don't interact. It's possible to hold a desire that has beliefs that conflict with that, and we don't even realize that our beliefs are the ones keeping us from having that. I use the example of a man wanting money, and somebody wants to be rich, or someone wants a bunch of money. Well, if they grew up in a Christian background and believe that rich people, can't get to heaven, and so they want to get to heaven and they want to be good people. If they think that rich people are greedy and insensitive and nasty people, then they're not going to allow themselves to manifest that money, because then they would be nasty, greedy, awful people who won't get to heaven.
Right.
So it's a matter of clearing beliefs that conflict with the things we want sometimes.
Right. And a lot of those beliefs are just learned. They're learned from our parents, from our mentors, and from our upbringing. Let's see. The last thing that you actually did, talked about in this chapter, was you talked about how you had sort of requested assistance. It almost seemed like you were wheeling and dealing here, making some deals where they wanted you to go back and get some more information, bring some more data back so you could download. But you had asked for assistance in maintaining a degree of whole conscious awareness while you're back in your physical body. Why did you do that, and how were they supposed to help you with that?
Why did I do that? Because I just came from the physical, and I think I had a very clear memory of how difficult that can be. Sort of another why I did that, why I would want to keep more of an awareness, is that in my life to date, the really hard things have been really valuable, but they would have been maybe a little less wrenching or difficult had I been able to remember that this has a higher purpose, and this has a higher value, or it is valuable. It's not just random pain, or
yeah,
or it's not punishment in any way. It's just keeping that awareness. Also, there have been times in my life when I've said, okay, that's enough of that. I'm just, that's gotten too weird. I'm setting that aside. I'm not going there. And then my life just tends to get really sloppy when I'm not using my awareness.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to kind of avoid that if I could.
Yeah.
And have a little more fun in the second half of my life.
Well, sure.
It's almost like, we think of it, and I expressed it in a way that made it sound like I said, I'm going to go back down there. Could I please have some help? but it's not like that. It's more like just emanating a request with that already includes gratitude, because you know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know it'll be granted.
Has it happened? Yeah. One of the things you asked if they could send you reminders along the way. Maybe they could, toss hints or clues or things along your path to sort of wake you up from the physical, blindness that we sometimes have. Have you recognized any of those things happening where you kind of was like, "Whoa, oh yeah, I gotta remember"?
Yeah, I think they happen a lot, and I think they probably happen a lot to everybody if we pay attention. But a lot of times, especially these days, a lot of times we're multitasking.
Yeah.
And when you multitask, you're not really paying close attention to the one thing you're doing.
Right.
And so I think we miss things.
Yeah.
But a kind of a funny, kind of a quirky little thing that happened just last week or the week before. I was thinking about, wouldn't it be nice to have a dog? Maybe I will get a dog. I've been putting it off because I travel a lot, and I thought that's not really fair to the dog. So about 2 hours after I'd been thinking about that, I was sitting in my living room, and a puppy that was maybe a couple months old came running up to my back door window and was looking in, and just sat down and looking in like, "Hello?" And I thought, whoa. So I went out there and I was playing with the dog, and I thought that eventually it would run home where it was from, and it didn't. It hung around for hours and hours, and finally I checked its tags, its name tag. Its name was Angel.
Oh, no way. No way.
And I ended up taking it back to the guy who owned it. But, that's the kind of, it's like, that dog's name could have been anything.
Yeah, that's right.
It was just a little reminder.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful. So your power of intent is very, very strong. The last thing I'll say, this will be the longest interview I ever do, but I think it's important. I'm not gonna worry about the time when something like this is so important. We're almost done here, but I thought it was funny. You also asked them to provide you with skills that would allow your life to be a little more entertaining, and you said like levitating. And you're like, come on, wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah.
And yes, it would.
That'd be cool.
Any skills that you think that you have gained since your near-death experience that you might not have had before that has allowed your life to be a little more entertaining? Speaking.
No,
public
not
speaking.
yet. But I'm patient.
Okay. Well,
I've had, before this experience, I've had I've had my arm levitate and some things like that. But what I find, it's kind of funny, but I started, every once in a while I think, what about that levitation and bending spoons and stuff like that? What about that? And so I put a little bit of effort into it for a couple days, and kind of the same way your friend was learning to leave his body, spend a little bit of time each day practicing until you get it.
Yeah.
But after a couple days I go, well, if I learned how to do this, then what? It's like a trick.
Yeah.
And maybe I would learn some things along the way, but I think I end up thinking, well, life is pretty miraculous. Just this is pretty miraculous. Or watching a plant grow, or watching a dog play outside in the yard or something. That there's a lot of little miracles that maybe I don't need those flashy ones, or maybe they're not all that meaningful. I don't know. I think too that what's a lot more meaningful is settling myself in a right mind. And when I'm in a right mind, then then maybe I could do those things, but maybe I wouldn't even care to try.
Oh, isn't that classic though? Right, it is. That is classic. You finally get to that point where you can get what you want. You don't want it anymore.
Want it anymore.
Yeah. Well, what a perfect way to end this. Actually, that's the most profound statement. And we'll leave everybody with that. We will say that I'll put your websites that you want underneath the video so people can link to them on afterlifetv.com. Anything that you want to mention, because people do watch these on iTunes and YouTube, other places. Any website or anything that you wanted to mention?
I have a blog at www.traceofelements.wordpress.com.
traceofelements.wordpress.com. Okay. All right, that's your blog. And you're going to be on the television show Unexplained. It's on with the big X, planed, Unexplained, which is on the Biography channel. You'll be on September 15th, 2012. So if people watch this ahead of time, you'll be able to see it at 10 p.m. Eastern. Is that all about out-of-body experiences? What's that about? I know it's about the Monroe Institute, right?
Yeah, the Unexplained film crew came and joined us at a Monroe Institute Lifelines program, which is, I guess the normal term is soul retrieval.
Yeah.
Do soul retrieval work.
Yeah. Okay.
So they filmed us talking about that. They filmed us coming back from our trips, our focus trips to different focus levels, and helping spirits move on. Sometimes we got names and places of where these people were from, so they did a little research on some of those.
Oh, cool.
So it should be interesting.
It should be interesting. I'll try to link up to it.
Film crew, and this is produced by Lyman, the guy who did the Bourne.
Oh.
Jeep.
Yeah.
So it's not just woo.
yeah, all the scary stuff. Yeah.
I think it's pretty well done.
Oh, good. Well, that's a big compliment. All right. Well, once again, here we are. We've now created a new record, the longest video I'll ever do probably. But I think it was great, and I really, really appreciate it. I'm grateful to you. We'll see you again because we're going to talk about another stage, the healing stage, maybe in a few months or so, right? Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you for having me, Bob.
My pleasure.